It's connected tangentially, I think, also to the announcement today by the many of the restaurateurs in Tel Aviv that they're going to be open tonight. It's illegal because just like on the eve of Holocaust Remembrance Day and the eve of Israel Memorial Day. So, about I guess over 30 years ago, the Knesset passed a bill that Tisha B'Av, is the National Day of Jewish Mourning, should also the places of entertainment and stuff like that should also not be open on in the evening. And during the day, of course, they can be. And it's always been something of a contentious rule because people don't really, a lot of people don't really identify with Tisha B'Av as a day, probably for all kinds of reasons. And there are always restaurants that stay open anyways because it's because they can't afford to lose the money, or because they don't really see any reason why not. So they absorb whatever the fine is and they keep going. Here it's become sort of a statement, and it fits in with a broader subtext to parts of the anti-judicial reform movement. Not all of it. I don't even think it's most of it. I hope it's not most of it, which has decidedly anti-religious element to it. And this also plays out in all kinds of different ways. So, for example, a significant part of the leadership, it appears, so I understand, certainly on the extremes of the anti-reform movement, advocate a total, I'll advocate almost a French model of the relation between church and state. In France, there's this idea of laïcité, that any public demonstration of anything religious of any kind is illegal. So you can't wear a yarmulke in the street, and a Muslim woman can't wear traditional women's dress, head covering, a hijab, or a tarikh, even just a headscarf, and you can't walk around with a Christian can't walk around with a prominently displayed a crucifix. I mean, just absolute wiping away of an absolutely neutral, secular, and extreme public space. I don't think that's.
We haven't reached that. We haven't.
No, we haven't. But some of them some people are advocating it, and you see it in extreme ways. You see it in extreme ways when you have these sort of like attacks on tefillin stands, Chabad tefillin stands, where people proactively go after them and attack them or yell at the people that are there and stuff like this. You have to give it. That's a small piece. And in what I wrote about what I was writing about was that for people for whom any manifestation of religion, again, it's a very small population, but there is this moment in human interaction where people who really can't stand religion or their own religion or other religion, wherever it is, will concentrate on not only just attacking or criticizing the people, but they will sort of pour out their wrath on sacred items that embody for them or symbolize for them their religion. So the Catholic Church made a point of always burning text of the Talmud, and that happened a lot. That happens in the 13th century, but the first indications of it are in the First Crusade, during the First Crusade, when the Crusaders actually took out time from attacking physical Jews to be able to desecrate Torah scrolls, for example, or destroy manuscripts. And I wonder whether, and the same thing, by the way, the Avsektia did in Russia when it persecuted Jews. That was the Jewish section of the Communist Party, which is bent on undermining or destroying Jewish life in Russia. Things that are sacred scare people, and they react accordingly. It's true, by the way, even within religious circumstances, they don't destroy things, but they're afraid of them. People are afraid of Sefer Torah, for example. People are afraid of other things. There was a time in Jewish history when remarkably many Jews, and in France and Germany and southern France and in Spain, didn't put on tefillin, not because they thought tefillin was bad, because they were worthy of coming close to the tefillin because they were scary. You follow?
Yeah.
In other words, it's a moment of being scared of the sacred, which is, by the way, there's an entire tradition which is embodied by Satmar, of all places, or not, maybe not so much Satmar, but certain parts in Karta, which they argue that the land of Israel is so holy, you can't live here.
Okay.
It's dangerous. So the only people who should live here are people who are of extraordinary piety, because they won't make a mistake. And it's a remarkable approach. It does exist because that which is holy is really scary.
But you're saying that the people who are doing these things to the religious objects because of fear, and yet there's also other reasons why people are not marking maybe holy days or destroying religious objects, and that's not fear, that's hate.
Right. So fear leads to hate. Fear leads to, look at one of the. I was talking to, and I'm certainly very respectful of the. I'm not going to talk about my position is actually, but I think I speak to people on both parts of the debate, and one of the things that I discover is, I asked somebody who's a prominent opponent of the government, and I said, is this specific bill, the reasonableness of this bill, is this really what is the trigger? So they said no, actually, because the opposition was willing to accept it. If the government would stop the rest of the whatever. All of this is deep and abiding apprehension of what is to come. So that, does this mean? What is this going to do? What is this empowerment of the government going to accomplish? Will it lead to this? Will it lead to that? Will they, I don't trust, it's a fundamental lack of trust in the people presently in power. Maybe they'll do this, maybe they'll do that. And there's nothing more terrifying than having people in front of you who you don't trust and who you're terrified of what they may do. They haven't done anything yet. But the unknown there's nothing more horrible than the unknown.
Absolutely, and yet at this time we're marking Tisha B'Av, and there's such a schism in the country, and maybe you can talk a little bit about this. The Sinat Chinam. What does that mean? Okay,
so the truth of the matter is, I think the best way to do this is to tie it all together is by discussing a Talmudic passage which is often cited and people are not aware of it, but it really has so many implications for our life today on both sides of the political divide. Mm-hmm. The passage, it's a story of Bar Kamsa and Bar Kamsa, two people. But the passage opens with a verse from the book of Psalms saying a person should always be afraid. Not in the sense to walk around being terrified, but you should always be concerned about what your actions might lead to. Think about the long-term consequences. Don't get carried away by what's going on, by the moment. And the story is very, very quickly. There was a guy whose name was Kamsa. There was a guy whose name was Bar Kamsa. Some say he was actually you're talking about father and son, and they had a mutual acquaintance, one of whom loved Kamsa and despised Bar Kamsa. And the guy made a big party. He apparently was a member of the upper class, and he invited all of the hoi polloi of let's say Jerusalem. And he sent out his servant to go and give invitations. And the servant, instead of inviting Kamsa, who was the guy's friend, he invited Bar Kamsa. And one interpretation has it, by the way, that it may very well be that this was a relationship between the Bar Kamsa, between son of Bar Kamsa, might have been his son. So in other words, it was like this was a lot more intense than it looks at first. Okay. So he invited Bar Kamsa, and the guy flips out when he sees him there, and he says, "Get out!" And he says, "Please don't embarrass me. This is we're in high society here. I'll pay for my meal. No, get out. I'll pay for half the meal. Get out. I'll pay for the whole meal. Just don't humiliate me. Get out." And the guy is totally humiliated. He doesn't know what to do. And he says, "All right, you know what? Since the members of high society here didn't say a thing, and I'm as much a member of their circles as they are, and they didn't say anything. They didn't object. They didn't take the guy aside and say, 'Listen, don't act like an idiot. Don't act like a jerk.' He says it must be that these people are really, really forget it, that they really agree with this kind of treatment of another human being." Mm-hmm. So according to the story, he ran to the Romans and said, "The Jews have rebelled against you." And the Nero, I guess, says, "How do I know?" He says, "I'll tell you what. You go. You send the sacrifice. and ask them to offer it for your birthday, for your welfare. And if they don't, then you'll know that they've rebelled. And so he takes this. So he brings back this animal, and he inflicts a small blemish in the animal, which would disqualify it according to Jewish law, but not according to pagan ritual practice. Mm-hmm. And then the question came: do we offer this animal or not? And all the rabbis there, according to the story, said sacrifice it. If we don't sacrifice it, then they're going to come and they're going to kill us. They're going to destroy the temple. They're going to destroy everything. You know, this is we're talking about Rome here. We're not talking about like some two-bit power. And yeah, you know what? And Pikuach Nefesh, saving human life, overrides every consideration in the world. Certainly, having an inappropriate sacrifice offered once to save people's lives. There's one guy there who was absolute purist. He was an absolute dogmatic. He was absolutely dogmatic. Absolutely not. Mm-hmm. We can't do that. We're not allowed to do that. People will say that we were wrong. People with this and that and the other thing, and we can't compromise at all, even though there was plenty of room for compromise. On the contrary, the truth of the matter is, from a purely halachic point of view, they were totally justified in doing it. But he didn't move an inch for some reason. He won the day, and the Talmud then concludes by saying his demagogy, his being unwilling to compromise, his being unwilling to see the consequences of his actions were responsible for the destruction, long-term consequences of the temple and the exile. All right, so there's a lot of historical elements in this story, but thematically, what's really critical is one thing is that you have a father and son who they tried to make friends with, and even though they were blood relations, nevertheless the guy refused to respect the other, if you want the famous other. Okay. More interestingly is then you have the situation with the guy says, you know what? If this is the society in which I live, I want it destroyed. These are the people at the head of the society. I'm going to destroy the whole society. Mm. So he invites people from the outside. He invites the greatest superpower and saying, come and destroy this. You destroy this country, because if I am treated like this by the people at the moment in power, we're going to bring down the whole thing. And how does he achieve that? He achieves it by through the distortion of a peace offering. Peace offering that Nero or whoever it was, it was Nero actually, says, because he puts in a blemish. Now, you never have you can never offer a sacrifice which is blemished to a god, but every single society defined the blemish differently. So here, what you have is also there's a cultural disconnect here between Rome, whose religious life and whose cultural life views some things as damaged and other things not, and the Jewish view, and that disconnect also, and an inability to communicate between the two sides, culturally and religiously, is also a major factor in the training records about to happen. And then you have the purists versus the people that say, well, we can compromise, we can save people's lives. And the question of whether, no, if I compromise now, then what's going to be later? Then this might lead to this, it might lead to this, it might lead to this. So we have to stand firm now and stand on our principles, and it doesn't matter what happens. And in the end, that leads to the whole thing coming up, being destroyed. Doesn't that sound eerily familiar?
Very familiar to what we're going through right now. And I'm wondering.
By the way, on both sides, I was thinking about this a lot today. Both sides are Kamsa, both sides are Bar Kamsa, both sides are Rabbi Zachariah ben Akulas, both sides are culturally disconnected. It's really across the boards.
Well, how do we get through this?
Oh boy. I mean,
it is Tisha B'Av, and we are reflecting today. Tonight.
Yeah, no, I think we the first thing we do is we throw Rabbi Zachariah ben Akulas to the dustbin of history. Okay. I mean, we have to, that's it. When there's room for compromise, and there's justification for compromise, the extremes, the purists are both they're both absurd and wrong. The temple could have still stood if the rule of Pikuach Nefesh. was invoked of the value of human life. By the way, is one piece of the story, the version of the story that's not found in the Talmud, but it's found in the Midrash. It's probably the original version. That Rabbi Chaim ben Kulas, but the whole story with the sacrifice wasn't what did it. But apparently Rabbi Chaim ben Kulas was one of the leading keys to this party, and when he saw how Bar Kamsa was being treated, didn't open his mouth. So diffidence, fear, giving into group dynamics of why say anything, don't rock the boat, is also deadly. So yeah, it's about sinat causes fear, but depends how that plays itself out. It was rooted in the Dr. Feld syndrome between Kamsa and Bar Kamsa. You know what Feld? Are you familiar with the Feld syndrome?
No.
It's an old doggerel in English. Okay. I do not like thee, Dr. Fell. I do not, the reason which I cannot tell, but this I know full well. I do not like thee, Dr. Fell.
Right.
I don't know what the reason was, but the question is how it played out that made the difference.